Hello everyone, welcome to Barnsley Museums. Here we are in Experience Barnsley, and actually you're getting a sneak peek of the museum behind the scenes, because whilst this horrible pandemic has been happening, we've been behind the scenes redisplaying the entire galleries of Experience Barnsley with hundreds and hundreds of new objects and stories, and they're all ready and on display for when we can actually reopen again. We are still closed, but I'm in here on my own. Here actually, no, I'm not. I've come in today especially so that you can see the museum. So you are literally the first people to see the museum out of all of our tens of thousands of visitors. So anyway, today we're kind of focusing on an aspect of Barnsley's history around the street called Eldon Street in Barnsley, and that's because Barnsley was lucky to be awarded by Historic England a Heritage Action Zone, or HAZ status. So these are awarded by Heritage England, formerly the Department of Works, or English Heritage, if you're old enough to remember them as that. And what that does is it just gives an extra spotlight and funding on historic places up and down the country that need a history uncovering and they need conservation. And so Barnsley is lucky that Eldon Street has now got a Heritage Action Zone status. And what that means is that a lot of the historic buildings will have a lot of renovation work, especially around the end where the Civic is. We're going to be supporting local businesses to funds, and there is actually a cultural programme attached to this, which what this presentation is forms part of that. So thanks for tuning in and listening, everyone from Befriend. I love you all and can't wait to see you back. But in the meantime, let's talk about this project and this historic street. So now, just before I start, normally my colleague Dr. Tegwin Roberts, who is an amazing expert, manages the project, but I've stepped in today. So like Maurice Stewart reading news, I do have some cards here because I've myself forgotten some of the dates and times. I normally just turn up and smile. I don't really know anything else, but that's why I've got this. So apologies for using those. Okay, so we're going to look at the history of Eldon Street starting with. So it was actually laid out in the year 1840 by architect John Whitworth around the old medieval town core of Barnsley. So Barnsley was a medieval town, and if anyone knows the town centre, you'll know that there's lots of piddly winding streets and little alleyways and nooks and crannies, and that really is the last of the skeleton of the medieval Barnsley, where you would have buildings like the Tide Barn. By the way, in Experience Barnsley, we actually have parts of this medieval barn in the museum that you can come and see. But by the Victorian time, Barnsley was much more prosperous. It had loads more money for mining and glass making as an industrial centre. And so various renovations went on in the town. And one of the first streets to be renovated and made into a grand arcade as such was in 1813, was Eldon Street. So it became a busy commercial and social hub with hotels, pubs, a public hall, shops, cattle market, even to the south. So you could buy a cow and you could go and buy a diamond ring as well. So that's Barnsley for you. From 1850, it just got busier and busier, and that's because in the 1850s, Eldon Street became a principal gateway when the new railway station opened at the end of the street. So if anyone knows Barnsley now, as you can see on there, there's a lovely photo of processions around when the railways were put into Barnsley. I suppose on the photo it also shows how the semi-rural nature of the town. That area now is all terraced houses and bus station and things like that. So that end of the street had the railway, and the courthouse, if anyone knows that building, that was where the train station was. And a large new public hall also opened in 1877, and a fashionable covered shopping arcade opened in 1892. So height of the Victorian era, Barnsley had loads of money, and it was splashing the cash on this new cosmopolitan shopping area. It was quite posh. Both buildings, the new public hall, which is now the Civic, and the covered shopping arcade, the Victorian arcade, and the railway, all still survive from that period. So if anyone knows Barnsley, if you cut up the side of the Civic, you can see the beautiful Victorian arcade, which actually is full of independent shops to this day. So kind of one thing is that Barnsley does still have a lot of independence. So when we can go back and shop in all of those shops, please do visit and look at some of the architectural detail around the Civic and the arcade. It's really quite special. So we're moving on to the Civic, which you can see a picture of now. It was opened as a public hall and mechanics institute originally in 1877, and it was gifted to the town in 1890, and later became Barnsley's first free library, and it was even a school of art. And then at the turn of the century and into the 20th century, the public hall was used as a museum of curiosities on the top floor. Specimens. So although we talk about Experience Barnsley being the first social history museum in the town centre, there was actually an earlier museum of curiosities on the top floor of the Civic, believe it or not. It was also used as a concert hall, so some of the great names like Ken Dodd, Charlie Williams, the comedian and footballer who was from Barnsley, used to play there to packed houses. So it really was the place to go to see some national acts. The main entrance, which you can see on the photo, which is covered, was on Eldon Street, and thousands of local people flocked there for these shows. There was also penny film shows showed, and a Saturday afternoon matinees, which attracted thousands of people and many children from across the borough. Some of the earliest films in the world were shown by Jasper Redfern, a pioneering filmmaker from Sheffield, actually in the Civic. So some of the first moving images you would see in that building. So it's incredibly historic, incredibly important to Barnsley, but also, I suppose, the wider history of the country. Like all things historical, some things are good, some things are bad, some things are terrible. And there was actually a disaster in the Civic which led to the death of 6 children in 1908. And it's terrible, but sadly they were wanting to go and see one of the earliest animations, a kind of a trick of the eye, and they were crowding in, and unfortunately kind of ended in disaster. So the story of Eldon Street is kind of full of these wonderful good and wonderful bad areas of history. Moving on from there was even a circus on Eldon Street. So in 1874, Charles Adams built a circus towards the end of the street, and it featured clowns and jugglers, ballet dancers and acrobats. But the thing that was quite special was that all of these acts, the clowns, the ballet dancers, the jugglers, all did their act on horsebacks, and there were stables, permanent stables on Eldon Street, so people would come and see the circus regularly. I think that would have been a magical thing to see, kind of as a child. And I suppose, I don't know if any of you know Barnsley, but certainly kind of nearby towns would have a similar thing. But we did have travelling fairs and circuses that would kind of come in later years, I suppose, as the inheritors of the circus and entertainment on Eldon Street. And they would be at the end of Eldon Street where the kind of courthouse car park is. And that was well into the 1970s, 1980s. So some of you might remember the tradition of circus and entertainment around the street. Talking about big epic celebrations and big epic events, good and bad, one good thing that came out of a terrible bad thing was in 1919, the Peace Day celebrations that marked the end of World War I was held, and Eldon Street was certainly kind of the place to go, one of the main thoroughfares where these street-wide celebrations were held, and celebrations all over the country were held. But on Eldon Street, it was quite special because 3,000 Barnsley soldiers marched down Eldon Street to a rip-roaring crowd and celebration, and much relief to these soldiers kind of coming back from such a terrible time in history. Much sadness as well, I'm sure, for those that didn't make it back. We even had tanks kind of parading down the street kind of at the time. So the street must have been able to take quite a heavy load with these heavy tanks from World War I. So imagine that, what a sight that would have been. So the next time you're on Eldon Street, just imagine tanks kind of going down there. Everyone was in fancy dress. It was a real party. Everyone got drunk, climbed up lampposts, And as you can see from the photo there, there's lots of people in fancy dress there. So we're kind of moving a little bit later into history. Another famous name connected with Eldon Street was photographer Warner Goffard Jr. And along with his siblings, he was credited with pioneering the montage postcard, which was used to mark notable events and disasters in the early 20th century. So these postcards, sometimes very happy, irreverent, sometimes very macabre, where it would note a disaster, like a mining disaster, were made by Warner Goffard and sold nationally and sent internationally from his studios on 6 Eldon Street. His studio doesn't survive, but a block of shops and offices that he built on the corner of Eldon Street and Regent Street South in the 1920s stand as a monument of his success. The building's quite deco. It's on Regent Street South, and if you look on the building, you can actually see a W and a G mapped out on the building, which basically there we've got a picture of Warner there, just popped up. He's a lovely chap, very kind of clever pioneer of photography. And then the building, like I say, if you go and see, it has a W and a G just above the door. It's actually a kind of a closed shop at the moment, I believe. It's quite deco in style. It's quite beautiful building. So again, next time you're in Eldon Street, just look up, because some of those buildings do, deserve note. Also, there was a department store called Porter and Sons on Eldon Street, and the well-dressed, snazzy kind of Anne Porter traded on Eldon Street from the 1890s until the late 1930s. So in its heyday, the Edwardian period and beyond, Porter's was the place to go. So a lot of you will remember Butterfield's, and Butterfield's being the department store in Barnsley that everyone kind of holds dear. But before then, there were earlier manifestations of the department store where you could buy silks, clothing, fancy cutlery, and all sorts of things if you had a spare bob or two. I'm sure there was lots of people looking into the windows. Apparently the window dressings were really beautiful. The store slogan was "Everything a lady wears." There you go. Another famous thing about Eldon Street, which is what I remember Eldon Street most dearly for, is the cinema on the street. So when I was little in the 80s watching Star Wars, Return of the Jedi and various films like that, it was an Odeon. But before then it was called the Gaumont Cinema. And it was really popular cinema in the day. You can see on the picture there, the cinema in the middle. But it was destroyed by fire, so it was rebuilt in the 1950s. As the Odeon, and it's now the Parkway Cinema, which is a lovely little cinema. So again, when we can go back to the cinema, please do go and support the wonderful historic building. Moving on from there, there was a few hotels actually kind of on the street. Barnsley was a place to go to. People would go out in Barnsley. They would travel in from the nearby towns and further afield. There was a hotel called the Magnet Hotel, which turned into a bar called Dolly's. So a lot of people will remember Dolly's in recent memory. And it was actually an alternate music venue, and people partied there all night, having wild parties, and quite famous DJs would play there. DJs like Stephanie Hurst, who played for BBC Radio Leeds and Capital FM, would play records in there all night. Just onto, I suppose, kind of the future and the present day of Eldon Street. As I mentioned before, the kind of the Civic had a library in it, so we've kind of come full circle in the fact that we do now have a purpose-built new library on Eldon Street, which was completed in 2019 in its modernist building. It has a sprung dance floor on the top floor. It has loads of community rooms. And it's a great resource. And guess what? It's even got a pub next door, so you can go and borrow a book and have a pint, which for someone like me, I think that's absolutely cracking. And it does link the kind of the old part, the historic part of Barnsley, to the new developments, which includes the new market and the soon-to-be opened new glassworks, which will have multiple new shops, bowling alleys and things in it. So Barnsley is ever-changing, sometimes for the good, sometimes for the bad, and we've got some wonderful new investment in Barnsley at the moment. So when you can, please do pop and see these places. Okay, so just that's a bit of a history. We're just going to have a look at some of the objects in the cases relating to the street, and then we're going to do a little quiz based on that. So I hope you were taking notes, because you will be quizzed. So my colleague Michael is going to grab the laptop, and hopefully you will be able to see some of our beautiful display in new cases in the museum. So this is for your eyes only. No one else has seen these, so just hang on a second. And as you can see on the screen there, there's a kind of an interpretation panel and a letter J at the bottom, and that letter J is actually the J from the shop Benjamin Harrell's, or Benjamin Harrell's, which was the iconic jewellers on Eldon Street. So when you leave the train station, it was opposite. And there is a historic clock to this day sticking out of the building, which has been recently renovated. It's a beautiful clock that you can see there, and so these objects here relate to from that jeweller's, Benjamin Harrell's. So we've got things like a 1950s crystal necklace, which would have looked particularly sparkly on a Barnsley dance floor at some point. Moving on, we've got some wedding rings there, wedding bands from Benjamin Harrell's from the early 20th century. And then something that when I've done engagement with befriend groups in the past, we did with some of the group members will remember we talked about a recent donation, which is a ring. It's an engagement ring with 3 diamonds in a deco style, and if you can see, it's the one in the green leather kind of crocodile print box. Those boxes were made in Blackpool, but the ring dates to the early 20th century. It is an engagement ring bought from Benjamin Harrell's. It's particularly good quality diamonds. We found it in a jeweller's in southwest London. So, but it was sold from the shop in Barnsley. So, unfortunately, the exciting part of its history, who was proposed to, and did they say yes? We actually don't know. That's lost to the sands of time. It's like a record there. It's actually the pawnbroker's book, which is people would do things like when you were skint and you couldn't buy these wonderful nice things like a silver napkin ring and these beautiful knife sets. What you could do is you could go into the shop and you could pawn your suit or something like your wedding dress or your best frock. And if you look on this document, you probably can't see from the video, but across it says best suit everywhere. So people were going in and getting a few pence basically for pawning their suit, and then when they got paid the wages from the shops, the mines or the glassworks, they would come and get their suit back. But that little bit of money for pawning their suit would put some patties and some corned beef and some meat on the table when times were hard. So it's a bit of a story of two halves there. One thing to note as well, one great piece of history of Benjamin Harrell's, the jewellers, was that you got a free bread knife with every wedding or engagement ring you bought, and that was engraved with Benjamin Harrell. So some of you will still have in your drawers these wonderful high quality kind of knife sets and things from Benjamin Harrell's. So it was opened in the kind of mid 20th century, early to mid 20th century, and was open well until the 80s or 90s. Can't remember the exact date, but it was the place to go in Barnsley to kind of get your wedding rings and your knives. Things like that. So we didn't have this collection before, but now we've managed in the last year or two to get a collection together, and it's now on display for people to see. So there's various other objects in the case from Eldon Street and around relating to shops and professions in Barnsley. So do come and see it when you get a chance, and we'll have a look at the cases. So we're just now moving on to the quiz. So sorry, I'm just going to be moving the camera a little bit there. Do apologise, we are live. So I'm just going to read you a quiz that you can do along with me based on what we've just discussed. So question number 1. Eldon Street was laid out in 1840 by the architect John Whitworth, who helped Barnsley town centre grow beyond its medieval core. It became a gateway to the town and its famous markets when a new railway station was opened. So what I'm going to ask is, what year did the station open? Was it 1850, 1880, or 1920? So what year did the train station come to Eldon Street? Was it 1850, 1880, or 1920? Okay, there are various other rail routes around Barnsley, but when did it specifically come to Eldon Street? Question number 2. Over the years, Eldon Street had hosted many shows and performances, and in 1874, when the Circus was built on Eldon Street, there were dressing rooms for the performers and stables for up to 30 horses. It was all lit by gaslight. But which one of these dazzling acts was not performed at the Circus? So I've got a choice of 6 here, but I want you to just mention which act was not performed at the Circus. Was it jugglers on horseback? Was it clowns? Was it acrobats on horseback? Was it acrobatic displays? Was it performing elephants? Or was it floral ballet on horseback? So what act was not performed at the Circus on Eldon Street, the Victorian Circus? Was it jugglers on horseback, clowns, acrobats, acrobatic displays, elephants, or ballet on horseback? There you go. So question number 3, we've got a landmark building of the Barnsley Mechanics Institute of Public Hall, which is now the Civic, built in 1877. So basically, I've got a long list down the side of various things the building was used for over the years, just to show you kind of how dynamic and important a building that was in Barnsley. But I just want to ask, can you tick which ones on this list was it used for? And you get a point for each, okay? So we've got a school of art. Was it used for a school of art? Yes or no? A town hall, a museum, a public library, a concert hall, a magistrate's court, reading rooms, a cinema, shop, or a bank. So was the Civic used for any of the above? So the number you tick right, you get a point for. But a school of art, town hall, was it a museum? Was it a library? Was it a concert hall? Was it a magistrate's court? Could you read in there? Was it a reading room? Was it a cinema? Did it have shops in it? Or was it a bank? So the number you get right, you'll get a point for that. Moving on to the next question, we've got the famous ring shop of Benjamin Harald's, where you would buy engagement and wedding rings. What gift was given to every couple buying wedding rings? So we've just kind of discussed that relating to the display behind me. So what gift would you get? Is it an engraved bread knife or a silver picture frame? So what gift would you get when you bought your wedding rings from Benjamin Harald's? Was that an engraved bread knife or a silver picture frame? Question 5, Peace Day celebrations. So on Saturday, 19th of July, 1919, the soldiers paraded down Eldon Street to mark the end of World War I. But the question I want to ask you today, what also joined the parade? Was it a fighter plane? Was it cannons? Or was it military tanks? So what also joined the soldiers on the parade down Eldon Street to mark the end of World War I? Was it a fighter plane, cannons, or a military tank? Okay, on to the next one. I hope you're keeping up. Number 6, Art Deco Glamour. So photographer Warner Goffard Jr., we discussed earlier, and his lovely Art Deco shops and buildings. What type of photography was Warner Goffard famous for? Was it photos of wild animals? Was it landscapes? Or was it postcards and portraits? So was he famous for his postcards? Was he famous for his landscapes? Or was he famous for his wild animal photographs? Okay. And then the next question, number 7, is about the cinema fire. So the popular Gorman cinema on Eldon Street was destroyed by fire. It was rebuilt and later became the Odeon, and now it's the Parkway. But what year did it reopen as the Odeon? Was it 1948, 1956, and 90 or 1963? So 48, 56, or 63 there for you. Question number 8. A Porter's department store. The store slogan was "Everything a lady wears," but what was A Porter's first name? Was it Andrew Porter, the Ann Porter, or was it Albert Porter? So Andrew, Ann, or Albert. So the person who owned that iconic little department store, what was that person's name? As a music venue, Dolly's on Eldon Street was a popular alternative music venue, especially in the 80s and 90s. But which of these famous DJs once played at Dolly's? Was it Mary Ann Hobbs? Was it Stephanie Hurst? Or was it Lauren Laverne? That was the DJ who played at Dolly's. Was it Mary Ann Hobbs? Was it Stephanie Hurst? Or was it Lauren Laverne? And on to our last question. 21st century design. So the Lightbox is Barnes' new central library, built on the corner of Eldon and Kendry Street. It forms part of the new town centre glassworks development. But what year did it open? So our new library, when did it open? Was it 2018, 2019, or 2020? So that's the year just gone. So was it 2018 the new library opened, 2019, or 2020? So I hope the quiz, that is the end of the quiz. I hope the quiz wasn't too hard, because I think last time I did a quiz it was too hard. So, but don't blame me, it was Tedwin that wrote it. So that brings us to the end of our wonderful Facebook Live. I hope I was okay. It's the first one I've ever done. So I'm just getting used to this technology, but I hope you enjoyed it and learned something about the wonderful Eldon Street in Barnsley. If you do want to find out more about the HAS Heritage Action Zone project in Barnsley, we will put a link in the comments section below this video, which will take to the Barnsley Museum's blog about the project, what's going on, which buildings are being renovated, and what to look forward to as we come out of lockdown. So we've got Jenny's written on the board. I've only got a small laptop, so I can't really see the screen very well. But Jenny says 14 points. That's absolutely fantastic, and the link has actually come up there as well. So you can find out more. There will be opportunities for you to get involved with the project, both virtually and hopefully in person in the future. And when we can, come back into the museum. I'm going to put some posh scones on, so come and see me. I've missed you all. Okay, so that brings me to the end. Hi Susan, I've just seen a message from Susan Skillcorn there. Hi, yeah, hello. Right, okay, so I'll see you later, and take care of yourselves. Bye bye.